All right, so this repo crisis, this delinquent crisis that we have been talking about for a while is about to get a whole lot worse. And what am I talking about? So we're entering in a time frame where it's peak repo season. I'll explain that just a little bit. And it's not just on the consumer side. What a lot of people don't know is that car dealers can actually get their cars repossessed too. And that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in this video. But let's go back to the consumer side. So the reason why we know it's going to get worse from here is because we're entering this time frame where, okay, there's been spring selling season, there's been tax refund season, and consumers who had money, extra money that was coming from their tax refunds, they would put down payments on these vehicles. They were able to actually buy them and get into the loans. And that creates more demand for vehicles. That creates more sales during this time. That's why it's called spring selling season. That's why dealers prepare for this, because we sell a lot more vehicles. Now, on my lot, I'm a car dealer. We sell vehicles that are $5,000 and under, but we only do cash deals. And when I say cash, it's not literally all just hard cash. We take debit cards. Some consumers pay with credit cards. It's ridiculous to think about, yeah, but there's a lot of consumers out there that will put a whole car on a credit card. I don't recommend this at all, but they do that. But we don't finance, we don't do any in-house loans, and usually our customers won't go and get their own financing through somewhere else. Most of them, they're paying the full amount for the car, and then we're transferring the title to them. They are owning the vehicle. But this is not the case at most dealerships. What they'll do is they'll have a down payment. Consumers will come, they'll get this money for their from their tax refunds. They'll put their down payment on the car, and then they'll start to make their payments. But what happens after this spring sale season, after this tax time, is the repo trucks start to get fired up, because what we know is that people that have this money that come in with their tax refunds, they'll buy vehicles that they can't afford, to continue to make the monthly payments going forward. And they probably know this when they're getting into it, but they're like, you know what? Oh well, I've got the money for the down payment right now. I can make this work. And a lot of times it's not going to work out for them. So this is why beginning of summertime, repos are going to spike. And this is not an abnormal thing for the market. Now, right now, we have a time period where we're experiencing a lot of inflation. A lot of people are stretched thin, especially in the lower tier of the economy that we're looking at, for these people whose wages are not going up in a substantial rate like what we've seen in a lot of the middle class, the upper middle class, over the last few years. So they're getting hit the hardest right now. They're getting tax refunds. They buy these cars, and then they can't continue the monthly payments. So that's what we see. That's what we see pop up at these auctions. We see many, many, many more repos. And it's because these customers just get into cars that they cannot afford. So on the dealer side, how does this really affect dealers? Well, you've especially these buy here pay here dealers, they sell everything on their lot, and then they're busy going to get cars, and then they will end up dumping a lot of them back at auction. That's why you'll see in our videos, in our auction videos over the next couple months, we're going to see a lot more repos, and a lot of them don't resell them back on their lot, and there's a couple reasons for that. Now, there are a few of them that they will keep because they're good enough to actually resell, but the reason why most of them will end up at the auction, even if the consumers only had it for 2-3 months, is because these people don't take care of these cars. If they know that they're going to stop making payments on the car, then what are they going to do? They're not going to do any oil changes. They're not going to fix the brakes. They're not going to worry about denting the cars. They're not going to worry about their kids spilling chocolate milk in the back seat. None of that stuff matters to them, because in their minds, it's not their car anymore. It's a short-term rental, and they're just waiting on it to get picked up. So that's why we see a lot of these repo vehicles at the auction absolutely destroyed. And these are vehicles that these buy here, pay here dealers, they're not going to be putting back on their lot, because it just costs them too much money to get it back to the place where they can retail it to the next customer and feel good about putting that customer in a loan, and then the customer feel good about continuing to pay on that loan. So from the bank side, we know that all those vehicles, they're just going to auction anyway, but they're not have a car lot, anything. They don't have a dealership where they're going to be retailing these vehicles that they wrote the bad loans on. Say bad loans. The customer went delinquent, they had default, and then the banks repossessed the car. Those customers are not those vehicles are not making their way to any Wells Fargo car dealer, nothing like that. So anything that is financed through a bank, through a financial institution, those are going to end up at dealer auctions for me to buy. These also spike around this time of year, even with the higher tier of customer that's going to get a loan through a Wells Fargo, through a Capital One, whatever. They are going to fall into that category too. There's a lot of them that fall into the category where they were able to come with down payment, get into a loan, can't pay it anymore. Repossession happens early summer because that's when these loans start to go default. That's why we get a peak repo time in the car market. Now let's talk about the car dealer side. So right now we've come out of this time frame where, okay, car dealers were supposed to be able to sell everything, but we're seeing that there's this big split amongst car dealers as far as who did really well during tax season and who did not do very well during tax season. And we're finding that dealers like me who have cars that are available for customers that are $7,000 and under, for me it's $5,000 and under, and can do these cash deals. Those are the dealers that really, really hit it hard during tax season. And I've talked to a lot of other dealers that have to go through financing through banks because they're selling that $7,000 and over up to like $15,000 range. Those dealers, I talked to them, asked them, okay, how was your tax season? Like, what tax season? What are you talking about? This has been absolutely horrible. There's a few reasons for that. Well, one, prices are too high, so customers are what we call trading down. So instead of buying the $15,000 car, they're going for the $5,000 car because they just can't afford to be able to make the monthly payments on that $15,000 car. So they're getting something that they can go A to B. So that's what we're talking about, trading down. And that's why a car dealership like mine and other guys who are selling the cheaper stuff, while we're doing so good, I think is because we're inheriting a lot of the customers that were going to the $15,000 range. Now they're coming down to the $5,000 range. But with these dealers that are in the higher range of cars on the used car dealer side, most of them have floor plans. And a floor plan is just a credit line that they're using to purchase their vehicles. Now, if they extend their credit line in preparation for tax time, like a lot of them did, and it ends up that they didn't sell a whole lot of cars during tax time, like what I'm hearing, then we find them in a situation where they owe money on these floor plans. And I've talked to some people that have worked with some floor plan companies, and what they say is during this time, if a lot of these dealers are hitting their 60, 90 days and they're not turning a lot of inventory, then these floor plan companies can go in and they can help these dealers sell these cars. And what they mean by helping these dealers is by going to get their cars and then taking them to auction. Now, here's the problem with that. So when we go to auction, what I like to buy is I like to buy franchise dealer cars because I know they're trade-ins. I know that not necessarily there's something wrong with that car. I know that that customer probably wanted to upgrade to the next vehicle. So they can trade in this perfectly fine Toyota Camry with 150, 175,000 miles. Nothing wrong with it. They just wanted a brand new Camry. So they traded in their old one. New franchise dealer didn't want that, so they sent it to auction. But if I see an independent dealer's name on there, I know that that's probably not a trade-in. That independent dealer tried to sell that vehicle on their lot, or they couldn't get it ready because something major was wrong with it. And for whatever reason, it didn't sell. It sat for too long. They need to get off their floor plan, so they move it on to the next one. And in that case, that also tells me, okay, there's something undesirable about this car. So if they can't sell it on their lot, what makes me think I can sell it on my lot? So I don't even look at independent car dealers' cars. Saying all that to say that other car dealers think the exact same way that I do. So if an independent dealer is running a car through an auction, you're going to have less bidders because you're going to have a lot of other bidders that are just like me at that auction that won't even look at it. I'm not, if it's pulling into the lane, I'm walking to a different lane because I don't even want to look at that car. And that's why these independent dealer cars are going to bring so much less than these franchise dealer cars. Then we bring it all full circle. So if they're going to bring a lot less than what the franchise dealer cars are, that initial dealer that's trying to sell that car probably bought it from a franchise dealer to begin with. So it's going to bring substantially less than what they paid for it the first time. And on top of that, we've got a market that's moving down right now. We have wholesale values that are moving down right now. So add that into the equation of them getting less money out of this car that they owe money on. So they just get more and more and more underwater the more these elements come into place, whether you have time, whether you have market going down, and whether you have who is actually repping the car to sell it. And all of these factors play into it bringing way less money. So when you get into that predicament with a lot of these car dealers, they're getting their floor plan companies are repossessing these cars from these from their lots. Then you end up where their floor plans are going to probably get, if not cut completely, at least they're going to bring their credit lines down. And I say this a lot when I'm talking about these dealers that are in trouble and are using floor plans. If their floor plans get cut, or if they get just taken away completely, then they can't buy cars. If they can't buy cars, they can't sell cars. And if you're a car dealer and you can't sell cars, you can't make any money, then why are you even in business? So I think over the next 6 months, particularly because of how this tax season worked out for a lot of these dealers, I do think we're going to start seeing a lot of these car dealers start to go under, and we're seeing some cracks in the market. Just me talking to these other dealers and seeing how they've been dealing with the current car market. There's a lot of trouble out there. There's a lot of these dealers that have inventory that they can't sell, sitting on the new car side, sitting on the used car side. So what I want to do now is go to the chat, and we'll start pulling up some questions. This one's particularly about repo. We're talking about repos right now. So what is the average cost of a repo, and does it depend on the price of the car? Well, it's going to depend on what the car is for what the average price of a repo is. But I can tell you, in relation to a car that's not a repossessed car, a car that's a trade-in, repossessed cars are going to bring less money when they go through the auction. And you can ask, okay, well, how do you even know it's a repo? Well, when we're going to these auctions, we can see who's selling the car. So there's a way we can see if it's a financial institution or if it's a buy here, pay here dealer. If it's a bank, if it's a financial institution, anything like that, we know 100% of the time it's going to be a repo. But the second thing is the buy here, pay here dealers. Now, those we can just make the assumption that's a repo. We can look at the car, because buy here, pay here dealers, they also get trade-ins. So that car can possibly be a trade-in. It could possibly be a car that dealer had on their lot and couldn't sell it for whatever reason, so they're running it through the auction. But most of the time, I would say 90+% of the time, on a buy here, pay here dealer that's sending a bunch of cars to the auction, most of them are going to be repossessions. And we can put some clues together by looking at the condition of the car. If it looks like it's brand new, probably wasn't repossessed, probably was on their lot. They couldn't sell it. And they dumped it at auction. So we just have to put this storyline together for a lot of these cars that we're seeing at these auctions to try to figure out where they came from. But it's usually pretty telling if it's a repo. Stained seats, dirty, trash left in it, dings, dents, scratches, things like that. That tells us that car's a repo. And when we see that, then there's some dealers out there that just won't touch repossessions because they know that they weren't taken care of, and pretty much because of the overall condition, it would throw them out of buying that car anyway. So when you bring dealers, when you take buyers out of the pool of the bidders that will raise their hand on the car, just naturally it's going to make those cars bring less money. So yes, overall, repossessed cars are going to bring a lot less than just your average trade-in that we're typically going to see come through the auction. All right. Answer another question. I think I answered that other question. I got taken off the screen, but I think I was pretty good. I think I got a thumbs up over there. Do you have a safety check on all your cars before you sell them? In Australia, you need to do a roadworthy certification to transfer title. Yeah. So here, what we have, I'm in North Carolina. Every state's going to be different, but I think most states do have some kind of safety inspection that they've got to pass before they are considered roadworthy and a dealer can sell them. Because I'm a dealer in North Carolina, I have to get two things done. I have to get an emissions inspection and a safety inspection. These are both done at the same time. They're done at licensed mechanics through the state that are allowed to provide these kind of checks for cars. But legally, I can't sell a car to an individual unless I get these things done. Now, emissions is going to check the OBD2, the computer, that throws codes, problem codes to your scanner. They're going to check that to make sure it's all well and good before it can pass, and make sure that your O2 sensors are performing correctly. Your converters are reading what it needs. Your O2 sensor are reading what the converters need to be actually sending out. It's going to check all these different systems to make sure there's no faulty whatever. And then we have our safety inspection, which is going to make sure that the frame's not too rusty on the car. It's going to make sure that like your lights work, your blinkers, your brake lights, windshield wipers work, headlights, things like that. All your safety stuff, seat belts, just all your basic stuff is going to work in the car, and we have to get all that done before we can sell it to the public. Now, when that's one security that you get, at least in North Carolina, when you're buying from a dealer versus buying from an individual, because your individual is not going to have that done before they sell the car, but your car dealers will. All right, so let's go to something else. 1 second. Let's go this. Do you think lien holders will start offering incentives for people to self-repo? Get a check for doing what you promised to do at signing in the event you can't pay. These institutions, these lenders, they don't want these cars back, so they're not going to incentivize anybody to give them their car back. If anything, they're working with these consumers to try to come up with payment plans to try to reconstruct their loans or whatever, to try to get them to keep paying as much as possible, because what these lenders know is that the wholesale values have fallen so much. They know how much negative equity is out there in the market. People are more underwater on their vehicles right now than they've ever been before. So no, these lenders don't want to incentivize people to get out of their loans, because what they know is that, okay, if they have to repo these cars, even if it's turned in, and even if they don't have to go get it, they're going to send it to auction, and they're going to lose so much money. So any extra payment that they can get out of these consumers before they have to go get the car directly comes out of that haircut that these banks are going to take. Yeah, and I know you're going to say in the comments that the consumer is on the hook for the deficit of what they owe versus what it's going to bring at the auction. But these consumers aren't making their monthly payments to begin with. This is money that these banks are typically not going to be able to get out of these consumers. They know that it's going to come down to a write-off. It's going to come down to whatever, but they're going to end up the banks are still going to end up losing a lot of money on a lot of these bad loans. And this is probably the worst that we've ever seen as far as values versus the repossession hits that these banks are going to take. I know back in 2008, there were a lot of people that lost their vehicles, repossessions through the roof. I know that, but we didn't have this period of time where we had this production shortage, sending car prices to the moon right before all of this happened. So I don't think the economic downturn, I don't think the recession, if we have one, is going to be close to what we experienced in 2008. But I think the negative equity, the gap between what people owe and what people's cars are worth, is at such a large distance away from each other that makes the situation worse as far as the repossession and as far as how much of a haircut these banks are going to have to take from all of these loans. Because remember, a lot of these banks were loaning 140% LTV, the loan value on these vehicles, and people were paying it, and they were signing up for these loans, and there were market adjustments on top of these cars. I talked about a Charger the other day where someone could go in and buy a Charger for $50,000. That's what the MSRP was, but they ended up paying not $50,000, $80,000, because you're going to have market adjustments on top of that, because you couldn't find Chargers, Challengers anywhere. And then you have all these add-ons, this nitrogen, all this other crap that these dealers wanted to put on these cars. So for this $50,000 car, your customer was paying $80,000 for it. And when they sign on that dotted line to buy that car immediately loses 20% of its value. So that's that car that customer paid $80,000 for it. We're not taking 20% off of that $80,000. Let's take 20% off that $50,000. What is that car supposed to be worth at the time? So they're now their loan is $80,000 because they put little to no money down, but their car value drops to $40,000 instantly. And then over the next year, we get to where we are now. You take another 10% off for another year, then they're down to about 35-ish, $36,000 is what their car is worth, but they still owe $65,000-$70,000 on this car. And now you can go everywhere and buy Chargers and Challengers. So there's a lot of people in this situation where they owe $25,000 more on their vehicle that they've had for 2 years. Then they could literally walk onto a Jeep Dodge Ram dealership today and buy a new one for. That's ridiculous to think about, that someone who bought a car 2 years ago owes $25,000 more than what they can buy a 2-year newer version of the same car for right today. We're setting up for a massive disaster. It's coming. Banks are going to get hurt in this. Dealerships are going to get hurt with this. And your consumers, a lot of them are going to be left holding the bag too. And that's why we're seeing a lot of this repo delinquency crisis. It's just going to get worse from here. But I want to thank you for watching this video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and like the video. And I hope you have a great